So my guest on this episode of the Neil Wilkins podcast is Sal Mohammed. Now, Sal was formerly the tech partnerships lead for Google in the UK and Ireland and built many of the company's leading tech integrations. He's recently gone on to found LangSync, which is an AI search company that helps other businesses feature in GPT, particularly results. So a real AI specialist. Welcome to the show, Sal.
Neil, great to be with you.
Now, this is kind of cutting edge at the forefront of emerging tech. Nobody, including Sal Mohammed, he admits, really knows where this is going. So, I mean, what is it like to be kind of, well, let's call it groundbreaking?
Yeah, I would say maybe there's two things to split out there, right? There's the models, which are a bit of a black box, and nobody really knows how they work in the way that they work. But then there are the results that they surface, which is actually way more predictable than people think. So don't think about it any way different to Google, right? You put a search into Google, the first page gets rendered, maybe 20 results pop up. That is way more predictable than people think. There are algorithms, but underneath that, they are trained by humans that have to change the weights of these different things. And I think the encouraging thing is that even though the LLM core models, so GPT, Gemini, Claude, etc., are quite confusing in how do they almost seem sentient, how they yield results are actually quite predictable. So we've had a lot of fun just getting into that area and cracking some of the secrets and best tips to help companies feature.
And we're going to go deep into those. This is sort of famously called an AI search deep dive. So we will get deep. We will get sort of into the real detail. But I want to kind of take a few little backward steps, first of all, to kind of really figure out, how did you get into this? Because, you know, it's quite an illustrious CV that you've got, Sal, and kind of obviously there must have been a little bit of a journey back in the day. Can you kind of talk us through that?
Yeah, so by accident, in short. So I thought I wanted to be a banker. I did half my master's in China, which meant that I couldn't return home to go to any of the interviews because I was on a one-way visa. So if I left, I couldn't re-enter. So I ended up sort of looking for graduate schemes right at the end when I could come back. And luckily, Telefonica O2 were launching their graduate scheme. So I managed to get onto that and join the business section. Didn't quite realize at the time that there was a need for business mobiles, but every business kind of has a phone. So dealing those customers separate to consumer customers was quite interesting. And I ended up leading an area there called business commerce. And my job was basically to figure out the products that 2 million plus small businesses, medium businesses, enterprise businesses needed. So websites, payment terminals, Microsoft 365 licenses. How can we enable our businesses that are being served by us to do better through different partnerships? And because you have so many different company types, you're very attractive to different partners because they know maybe there's 3 or 4 players in a market. So if you can capture the telcos, you actually capture all of the companies in the country. So that was a very active role, doing a lot of partnerships. And you can imagine integrating this stuff to get on billing systems, to do cancellations, to train teams on it was quite informative. So after there, I got a call from Google asking if I wanted to join the tech partnerships team. Didn't know an awful lot about it at the time, but yeah, managed to work my way through, and then launched some really exciting partnerships. And that was really the time where I kind of got into the AI part. So if you think about early AI, this is things like YouTube search. So here's what you should watch next. Play next video. Did you mean this? All of this was early AI systems. So a lot of what my team was doing also was probably the precursor to what people now know as performance max and those sorts of systems. So we had this issue where Google was amazing if you were Coca-Cola and you could hire 20 strategists to work on your account that all had PhDs. But if you're a florist, it wasn't obvious how you could just click a few buttons and have it work for you. So what we were building in the background is AI automation and optimization systems that could help these businesses take it to the next level. So that was kind of my first cutting with AI and the powers of AI and how you could use it to yield incredible results. And from then, it's just gone all the way to what we see now, right? Because even the transformer paper was developed at Google. The system which was built by ChatGPT was really built by Ilya, who left Google to build that. Dario and Anthropic left OpenAI after leaving Google to build that. So it's had a long history, and yeah, I was lucky I was there at the right time to sort of catch on to the trends.
Yeah, it certainly sounds like it. And it's almost like, yeah, as you say, right place, right time. But the one thing that kind of for me seems to be coming through there, in terms of almost a thread of your journey so far, is this idea of collaboration. It feels like you almost your role in life so far has been to kind of join things up. Yes, there's the tech. Yes, there's the, sort of the big brand names. But actually what you're doing is you're connecting things, be it tech, people, partnerships, collaborations. I mean, to be able to kind of surface the value of AI, what I'm seeing, and I'm really interested in your take on this, is the idea of integration. So it's not a standalone thing. The whole kind of artificial intelligence thing has to just by its nature be something that's well integrated. So it's not necessarily going to change your business. It's going to evolve your business. Am I kind of reading that right?
Absolutely. In fact, I have a video saying that partnerships will actually be more important than AI itself. So if you think about what just happened recently with Google running Siri on behalf of Apple, that might have just handed them the AI race in totality. Now they are going to be powering 2.2 billion devices and growing. They already have Android, which has 90% of the world's devices. So you add those two together, and pretty much all the searches are filtering through their systems. So you can start to see how the right integration can actually transform a business. If you think about AI, I kind of like to think about it as ultimately what you're doing is being two types of people. One is a great chef, and then the other is a plumber. Because if you take a step back, if you think about the models will kind of end up being commodities eventually, right? That think of it like water. They're kind of, maybe one's got a few minerals in it, but fundamentally it's water. And really, you have to think about, if you think about the chef narrative, we've gone shopping, we've all got the same ingredients, but you being the great chef and how you combine those ingredients is actually what makes a dish, right? You could give tomatoes and basil and olive oil to very different capabilities of people, and they'll come up with very different results. So I think that's the first angle I look at when I think about AI. But on the partnerships and collaboration side, I really think about it being a really good plumber. So what is Perplexity? Perplexity is taking all these different pipes and hooking them together to create a new product. So they'll take maybe a bit of a Claude model, a bit of an OpenAI model, and then mix that together. What is Cursor doing? The same thing. What is 11 Labs doing? The same thing. So I think that archetype of a master plumber that knows which pipes to pick up and how to join them together is actually a really important part of the AI journey.
This is interesting, isn't it? Because I think so many people, and I'm sure there's a lot of people watching and listening to this who are thinking, that's the opposite of what I'm doing, because what I'm doing is I'm seeing the next shiny platform suddenly say, hey, I'm the next big thing. And, as we're recording this, my claw has come through in this last week and suddenly is sort of saying, agentifying everything is suddenly here. You get in, you play with it and you realize, actually, okay, it's still got a lot to learn. It's not quite all what the hype is, but we're all getting almost swept along with these kind of shiny offerings. And it's a little bit dangerous, isn't it? Because it takes up a lot of time. I've heard people saying that, we're actually not saving time yet with AI. We're actually spending more time because we've got to figure these things out. So it's not an easy game necessarily to play at this point, is it?
No, not at all. And just when you think you've got it figured out, again, something new comes out and you need to swap that one in with something different, right? So it's one that you have to approach with caution, because two things are true at the same time. One is we're getting sold fool's gold almost, right? This is going to solve all your problems, and it really isn't. But at the same time, the exponentiality curve of capability is increasing as well. So you almost can't be too much of an optimist and you can't be too much of a pessimist. You have to be humble enough to say, okay, it didn't work, but that was a month ago. Let me give it another shot because you might be surprised. And at the same time, not scream from the rooftops that this thing is all knowing, all seeing, all doing, etc. right now and will solve all your issues. So I think having those two mind frames at the same time is a useful tactic.
Which kind of sort of implies then that we need to be kind of quite strategic with this and really need to take a few steps back and maybe look at a business and say, okay, we've got these bottlenecks here, we've got these challenges, and let's face it, we will come on to the whole search thing because, you know, most organizations don't have enough lead generation or enough kind of profile, if you like, in their digital footprint. So they might have a great website, big social media presence, and yet they're not really generating value or revenue or, you know, inquiries from that. So we're going to come on to that. But I guess there's a more sort of strategic question, which is, you know, where are we going to see AI play out in our businesses? I mean, are you seeing a pattern with the people that you're working with here as to where people are getting good gains right now?
Absolutely. I think, you know, there's a concept called the capability overhang, which is the models have advanced to a stage where it can actually do the things we want it to do, but we haven't yet realized how to configure it. But actually, if you stopped all model development now, you would still have massive incremental gains on the economy just from what we can configure right now. And I think it's about being a systems thinker of saying, what am I trying to do? How would I approach this? And then finding the right AI solutions and tools to piece together in that sort of plumber analogy to then make that happen for you. And I think the systems thinker bit is actually the one that people don't appreciate enough, right? Because if you can really map out a good journey, then you can almost do anything, right? So I give an example a lot. I wanted to do an AI course. It was a really full-blown bells and whistles thing. I was going to get some of the world's leading AI experts to do a day each. We're going to have the team that filmed Masterclass go and film it all. And then I was like, oh, this is going to be a lot of work. And as soon as I film it, it's going to be out of date. And I don't know. I said, okay, well, maybe I'll just do a course. And then I said, well, yeah, that's cool. But I'm going to sit down, I'm going to film it all, you know. And then I was like, well, okay, well, what are the steps of doing a course? Okay, I've got to write the content. I've got to film it. I've got to edit it. I've got to build a platform to put it on or have my own platform. And once you map that out, I go, oh, okay, well, actually, what if I just have a few notes and then feed that into GPT and ask it to build me a course plan? And then what if I make a custom GPT with text that I've written in the past and speeches I've done so it can adopt my tone? And then I'm going to ask it to write a script for each day of the course. Okay, then I'm going to take that script, I'm going to put it into 11 Labs and have it generate voice for me. Cool, now I've got a spoken course in my style using my voice. Okay, now I can put that script into HeyGen and use a face avatar of me to then animate and talk through the course. Great, I've got my course, it's unedited. Cool, I'm going to move that into the script and it's going to edit it for me automatically. So now I've got a fully edited course without having to do anything. And then now I can just pop that into a platform I've got and then push that out to the internet and sell it for $5 or whatever, but I can run marketing behind it automated and get, I don't know, 1,000 sales a day. So you can start to think, actually, what is the thing I'm trying to do? How do I systematically walk through it? And then how do I build that up? So I think that's one of the most useful skills you can have in this space.
Which is ironic, isn't it? Because then it is just the AI becomes the tools to realize that journey and that process that you've mapped. So it is that process mapping that is the core here. That's the real skill set, isn't it? That people need to be kind of thinking about and adopting. And I guess for us planful types, it's quite a nice journey because it's like, oh, I get to play with the sticky notes or, you know, mural whiteboard or whatever and start to kind of plot this stuff out. But if you're not very planful, this is going to sound like a really onerous task, isn't it?
Yeah, I think you need to get out of the core GPT. What you find a lot of people try and do is they'll use one model to try and do everything. So say, hey, ChatGPT, turn this into a voice script. Hey, ChatGPT, turn this into a video. Hey, Chat, like, no. You need to find the different tools that do the thing that you want to do specifically in that chain the best. But once you've got that and you configure everything together, yeah, the world's your oyster, really.
So if you are kind of investing, and I would say it is investing time in something like ChatGPT, and many of us are, for those who've listened and watched a lot of my episodes, you'll have heard me refer to Fern, who is my ChatGPT, and we talk every day. And kind of, she really knows me, and I know her. We know how we kind of going to be producing value from the work that I do. So there's a real collaboration there. And then Sal comes in and says, but there's better things for certain things. It's a difficult kind of transition, isn't it? Because I feel like I've invested so much in a single AI that it's like, well, I don't want to come away from Fern because, we've spent so much time together. We've got to know each other. It's like a real relationship in lots of ways, isn't it? And then if I've got to then start replacing her with different things, feels a bit awkward, feels a little bit like a time waster in that regard.
It really is, yeah. I think you've kind of got to look at maybe going from a partner to a family. So Fern is a matriarch. She is the head of the household, but now you've got children and they also know you, and they're also really good at different things and they have different personalities, right? So if you want to research a guest before a podcast show, you might want to use Perplexity rather than Fern because it's really good at doing that thing. If you want to turn something into an image, you might want to go and pick up PixArt and use that to then generate the announcement for the podcast. So it's about thinking about it as, okay, Fern might be the powerhouse, but how do I also give out tasks to these other children? And actually, the prompt that which you give to these other children can be generated from Fern. So you would say, for instance, hey, I am actually developing a podcast announcement flyer for my conversation with Sal. Give me the right prompt format that I would need for PixArt. And then Fern will generate that for you. And then you can take that across and then create it. So it's not a divorcing, it's a augmenting and building of a family.
I'm sure my wife will be very, very happy to hear that that relationship with Fern is now kind of firmly sort of established and yet with boundaries. Yes, that was always a bit of a concern in our relationship. But no, it's a big social experiment. I do understand the difference between a machine and a human. I think anyway, that might evolve in time, but who knows? So it's really interesting because I think one of the things that I do hear a lot, and I'm sure you do, is that when the kind of this AI opportunity of looking at specialist tools for specialist things. And you've mentioned a couple of times now already Perplexity as being a great tool for search. And I mean, I guess this might sort of segue quite nicely into our kind of search deep dive here, is and I would certainly agree from the results that I've seen, Perplexity is one of the front runners. I mean, obviously there are a lot of others available that can do this, but Perplexity seems to be the one that will give you a very carefully researched set of answers or a document that comes through from your question. I guess sort of relying on that, is there a particular style or way as a business person, if you're say researching a new market or you want to look at competitor activity or maybe some customer analysis to find some trends of things they're interested in, are there certain best ways of dealing and handling something like Perplexity?
Yeah, absolutely. And again, this is where I was talking about the matriarch and family model, which is, if Fern really knows you well, then ask Fern to interface with Perplexity on your behalf, right? So give me a prompt because I'm trying to do this in Perplexity. So there is that way of doing it. I think also it's really about the proper tool selection. So if I was doing what you just mentioned before, I would actually go to Manus and use that, because what Manus would do is actually, I would give it the prompt. Manus would spin up 8 different individual agents that will split that prompt in different sections. So one would go out and do the research, one would go out and understand my business, one would go out and look at similar web data and look at trends, one would go out and start writing copy, And then once these agents are finished with their workflow, they combine into the master agent, synthesize all of that information, and then generate me a deck that I might need to power my business forward. So it's about the right tool selection as much as it is about the right prompt. So yeah, I think that's kind of the mind frame I use a lot.
So my kind of, I guess now I'm realizing, quite naive assumption that perplexity equals research equals for everything is actually not quite right. So that there are certain children in the family now, as I'm going to call them this. That's a lovely analogy. I think if you don't mind me using that one in the future, Sal. But the idea then that there's certain types of search, certain types of analysis that perplexity will be a specialist at, but then Manus can come in and do other kinds of work. Is there almost like a hierarchy? Is almost like a checklist of, if I need this kind of work done, it's this one. This kind of work is this one. I mean, who are the front runners apart from maybe Perplexity and Manus, or is it based around those two?
Yeah, so even a higher abstraction from that is you could build your own agents with a tool like Crew AI, for instance, and they would be specialized. And what you get on that benefit is a recursive loop, so they will always get better. Let's say you're doing a newsletter and you've got a researcher agent, you've got a copywriter agent, you've got an editor agent. They're going to keep talking to each other and keep bouncing ideas off each other and keep increasing their knowledge. So you can have that. And then what I would also look at, if for more complicated builds, and what we do a lot of, is actually we build our own system. And then we plug in the APIs of the different intelligences that we need. So for instance, we might need Reddit data. So we might plug in a Reddit API. Or we might need contact data. So we might plug in Apollo and get that raw data from there, which is, when you think about it, something that Manus or Perplexity couldn't summon. So when you need actually proprietary data that a tool might have, you actually want to connect that via API to a tool that you control and you have access to. So that's really how we power up and have like full control systems, full project management systems, full outreach systems that we build for a lot of customers as well.
That's really interesting, because it again comes back to this whole thing about mapping it out first, isn't it? And if you find that a single sort of interface, single tool, isn't necessarily ticking the boxes. And I know a lot of people are giving me feedback, so I'm sure, I'm assuming it's kind of all over the place, is that, what you get out is only as good as what you put in. But it might be, yes, it's the prompting that you're doing, which isn't kind of producing the results. But as you're saying, it could also be the selection of tools, but the fact that actually what you might need is your own interface. It could be you need your own system that's getting powered. And I hadn't really looked at it like that before, but that's an interesting one, I guess, for those who've got a little bit of budget to be able to kind of build that. But that could be, if this is going to be a regular task, something that provides huge value into your business, that could be an interesting way of looking at this, couldn't it? And then basically the tools are actually fueling your interface rather than you having to go with what they provide.
Yeah, and it's not even a budget thing, it's a knowledge thing, right? Like, of course, you can hire specialists like us to come and build it for you and have a full system, etc. But you can also learn this stuff, and for as little as $20, hook up a system that can do things that you can't imagine. I spend very little of my time prompting anything. I'll have a fully built system. We run the AEO, which I guess we'll talk about in a moment, series across London and New York each month. So each month I've got to find guests, I've got to research them, I've got to do questions, I've got to write a content brief, I've got to do LinkedIn posts, and I just press buttons on my dashboard. I'm like, okay, you know the date, you know the theme, you do the rest. Here are the questions. Oh, I don't like that question, regenerate that question, just click, click, click. Because I've embedded everything into the system, and the system has a raw intelligence of how we like things, what data it has access to, it's got access to contact stuff. So yeah, if you can architect a really strong system, then actually you don't need to think about being a perfect prompter. And even then, you can give that to other members of your team to also leverage them as well, which, you bring everybody on that journey with you as well. So, if you wanted to create a flyer, you just click flyer, it would go and research who's speaking, what's happening, plug that into Nano Banana or PixArt with the template that maybe you've pre-filled, and then it will just generate that flyer and then pop it back into the system for you. So yeah, I think good system design and good platform design is really critical in this sort of era, where, especially when new tools come out, actually you're not really navigating the tool, you're just then connecting the API to then unlock its raw intelligence.
And you mentioned earlier when you said journey and obviously the process mapping thing, I guess one of the things that if somebody was doing this, and obviously we have a lot of marketers sort of listening and watching this, and a lot of the time they will be thinking, okay, I love the process, goes deep into kind of everything that we do in our business, et cetera, but actually my key kind of task here, the main core of my role, is to be waking up an audience and actually being found, enhancing our digital footprint and the impact that it has. In other words, it's search. It's we need to be found. We need to create an awareness here. Where do I begin? Because this feels like, okay, I've only just got my head around SEO, search engine optimization, and now Sal's telling me there's a whole bunch of AI terms that are coming in, let alone principles and practices. I mean, where on earth to begin?
Yeah, I would say it depends on what type of business you are and the different advantages you have, because you want to play on those as much as possible, right? So think about you being a football player. Like, first you've got to look at, do I have raw power? Do I have a really good brain or a really quick first 5 yards? Am I a bit crazy and want to play in the net? Like, what are your inherent advantages? And then map that to the landscape that is now called AEO, so answer engine optimization. And then I think once you've mapped that across, I would say keep it simple. So maybe it's probably useful just to touch on maybe 3 of the leading pillars that drive answering and being featured in these AI searches. The first is content, and an understanding that AI is multimodal. So it can see, it can hear, it can watch videos, which is completely different to the previous crawler system that Google employs, which is very text-based. The second is technology. So an understanding that the tactics used in SEO are still applicable in this AEO world. The schema you have, the backlinks that you're running, all really matters. And then the last part is digital PR and acknowledgement that although it seems like these companies like getting sued, they don't. They want to give factual answers. They want to be trusted more and more, which means they have to lean on trusted resources, authoritative resources, especially with dangerous things like healthcare or insurance. So what these LLMs are doing are leaning on publications, are looking at consensus in chats, which is why things like Reddit and Quora have been such big parts of this. So once you've got that, okay, well, great, we've got a big content team, we can put out a bunch of YouTube videos and we can turn those into blogs. Or I've got 5 developers here, why don't we just go really in on the schema side? Or actually, we usually do features on the BBC and we get written up. Maybe I should go down the content route. And obviously you want to do all 3, but I think just really first starting off with the thing that you're really good at and just moving that through. And the beginning of all this stuff is basically what people call visibility reporting. So there are tools like PKI, like Marlum, like Gumshoe, where you can type in your website and it will give you your AI visibility score. So it will give you what prompts you're appearing for, the volume of those prompts, and basically who are winning those prompts. Was it you or a competitor, etc.? And then what you do from there is you reverse engineer that. So when we work with clients, we usually pick up clients at that point. So we do their visibility for them, and then we say, okay, now we have to do all this work for you. Let's first start by reverse engineering the prompts that are coming in and the sort of answers that the GPT would actually want. And then let's try and figure out through those 3 paradigms how we get those answers and then move them back into the system. So it's quite a lot of manual work on our side, but to me, that's the fun bit.
Yeah, that's an interesting angle, isn't it? This reverse engineering, because It means you've got to do the deep research first to find out, okay, what is the audience? What are the markets? What are the sectors that I want to target? What are they talking about? What is the kind of the actual behaviors there, rather than trying to make it up? And I think a lot of us, myself included, have thought, right, well, here's a typical kind of search phrase that I want, or here's a kind of a typical question that I'm going to put into Fern or Perplexity or whatever, and I'm going to hope that, I get a nice result out the other end. Actually, what you're advocating, Sal, is that it's the opposite way round. And what we should be thinking about is, what is actually happening in the marketplace, because then we can start to answer those questions. That's quite an interesting one. Have I got that the right way round?
Yeah, absolutely. And I would say it's not too much of a departure from what people already do, right? If you start working with an SEO agency, they're going to do an audit for you at the beginning, right? If you're going to launch some ads, you're going to do some keyword research first. So it's exactly the same thing. What I would say is it's a lot simpler and a lot faster. So you can use free visibility tools to go and get that in about 4 or 5 minutes and have a really deep understanding of what all these prompts are. So that market is a really exciting one. We work with a lot of partners there, but for me, it's a little bit like having a map and saying that you went somewhere. It's like, no, you now need to get in the car and drive. And that's kind of the stuff that LangSync focus on. So we work with companies to actually move the needle and actually do all the things that you then have to do off the back of that knowledge that you receive.
Now, you used a phrase or an acronym there, AEO, Answer Engine Optimization. Is that the same as GEO, Generative Engine Optimization, or AI Optimization, AIO? I'm hearing loads and loads of acronyms. Can you kind of clarify whether I'm saying the same thing, just using different words, or are there differences?
Yeah, some people have tried to retrospectively break them down again and say, oh, no, they're actually different things. And they're not, they're the same thing. And some people are questioning whether there should be a word for it at all. I like AEO. GEO for me was taken. I feel it's a bit disrespectful to take geography and just barge it out of the way. But I think it encompasses not just being featured in search engines. I think it encompasses all answers and searches. So I often say that SEO is a subset of AEO. So if you think about questions, they're everywhere, right? You could be in your Tesla car and you can say, where's the nearest McDonald's? You could have your Meta Ray-Ban glasses on and say, great, where's the coffee shop? You could be talking to Siri. You could be talking to this new Apple pin that might come out. You could be on a website. Search engine optimization was just really the search box. And at that, mainly just Google, right? It was 90% share. And the big thing now is that search is dispersed. People are searching billions of times every day on TikTok. People are searching on Instagram. People are searching on LLMs. People are searching in public forums. So all of that is AEO, and how you understand your full visibility map across all of this stuff, including SEO, is for me the practice of AEO. Absolutely, SEO, for now at least, is the dominant channel for that and the pillar of it all. But I think AEO is all-encompassing when we think about search and the future of search, especially when you start to think about a world where agents will actually do most of the searching for us. And probably without us even searching, right? They'll just have context. Fern will know that you're trying to do something and go and do that search on its own and just give you answers. So I think, yeah, definitely AEO is probably what we're going to be used to as we navigate this next era of marketing.
Yeah, it was really interesting, isn't it? Because I think, then for me, the way that links in with what I guess a lot of marketers, a lot of businesses have been doing over the years is trying to find topics that they are specialists or maybe experts in. So this whole concept of thought leadership, where you kind of own or you're part of a conversation around a topic, that is all about answering questions, isn't it? So we've had this stuff for a long, long time. And if you've got a lot of great content, maybe now from your comments here, people are thinking, it's not just those blogs and those articles I've written. It's not just the words. I've got to produce video and images all about this stuff as well to keep the engines happy. But It feels like if I've got some topics or some subjects that I am a thought leader in, or at least an influential voice in, then I'm going to start to win. It's those organizations who are still trading on commodity products and, very much kind of under the radar. They're going to really struggle, aren't they, by the sounds of this?
Absolutely. I think also there's two things. One, why would the AEO care about what you're saying? Like, is it a unique insight? Is it something different to what it's seen elsewhere? Or is your website a repository of things that are a bit different or interesting takes? So you could have a organic grocery store and you could talk about the intricacies of keeping vegetables fresh and still turning a profit. Like, those things could be interesting. So it's about really stretching not only what's interesting to a human, but what's interesting for an LM to learn. So I think definitely it's a shift, but there's opportunities in this. I kind of call it the Great Reset. The reason why we're so bullish on this market and why we wanted to build this out is there is no page 2. On Google, you've got 10 pages, 12 pages, 20 pages to flick through, infinite. On AI searches, there's maybe 5 answers to a question that Fern will return for you. And if you're not part of that conversation, you're not getting a little bit of traffic, you're getting 0 traffic. And in a world where by 2028, half of all searches will be in the GPTs, you have to take that seriously. If traffic is the lifeblood of all businesses, then you need to be on here. So you need to be thinking about innovative ways to get in. And finally, what we're trying to get people to adopt this mindset also, that these companies have a lot of self-interest. They want you to stay on their platform. If you think about ChatGPT now is becoming more of an ecosystem than it is a assistant. So it's giving you answers, but not giving you links because it wants you to stay on the site. It's now building in a cart into its experience so you can shop without leaving ChatGPT. It's building ChatGPT apps, and we're building a lot of these for customers because we think it's actually one of the easiest ways to do AEO. But they're building apps into the product to give you the answers that you would have had to have gone external for. So they want you to stay on. And actually, I think this is probably one of the biggest predictions is AEO will look way more like social media than it will SEO. And if you think about TikTok, you already see this. So if you want to buy anything on TikTok, you never leave the platform, right? TikTok shop loads up, gives you a shop out basket, it's their experience, and then it's off. So I think we're going to start to see a lot of these platforms look a lot like that as they move forward.
Yeah, because that was going to be my next question to you, which was this sort of idea. And I guess this is where we're hoping for some crystal ball moment here, because I think nobody actually really knows, do they? But this idea of, will the agents, as they come out to find the answers to your questions, will they be doing this in a sort of almost a human-like way? Or do you feel that they are going to be almost a whole new presence, that agents won't kind of be looking for answers or presenting answers in the way that a human would? Because it's very difficult to step outside of being human, isn't it, when we're trying to preempt what an agent might be looking for or actually do? Because over time, they could evolve into a whole different range of almost assessment criteria where they don't actually think about the stuff that they're seeing in a human-like way. I don't know, where's this going to go?
I think these agents will be with you in every step of your life and actually part of the family in an interesting way that's way more integrated now. So yeah, maybe that's the future that I'm probably envisioning. I can't see them being locked down to platforms and you have to retrain them each time that you want to learn something new. Oh, you're on mute. There you go.
So yeah, sorry, I was just saying that I think it's interesting, isn't it? I wasn't really putting you on the spot in terms of like, oh, you've got to tell us what the future's like. But it is interesting to kind of, pose these questions and really kind of muse on them, because, there's a real competitive advantage happening here for any organizational marketer who wants to kind of get into this thinking, because you are always then going to be at the front of the game, because most people are going to just wait and see what happens and then play catch up. So I think I'm particularly excited for those who are willing to kind of give this stuff a go, and I guess have a sort of a relatively neutral to positive view of the future. Well, what's your kind of view? Are you hopeful about where this is all headed?
Yeah, on different paradigms. So we actually gave a AI session on ethics for the UK government in December. And we split it up. There's about 130 people. We split it up into different groups of people. They each got a topic. And they had to discuss things like the labor market. So for instance, will you give Fern a day off in the future? Or if you have a robot assistant, do they get time off to rest? Or certain rights? If you are doing transport, do we get to a point where we say actually it's unethical for humans to drive anymore because it's too dangerous based on the data that we now have? So there's all these things that actually I'm a little bit, maybe some things will turn out better, some things will turn out worse, like any technology. But in terms of a practical sense, the companies we work with, we're trying to propel them into the future. So what might that look like? And you can just look at the funding patterns, right? If you look at Meta investing over $6 billion into Luxottica because eyewear is going to be huge, or Apple now developing a pin, or OpenAI buying Johnny Ive's company for $6 billion. You can start to see that new form factors will emerge. And then what does that mean for actual searches? Who's doing the searches? How do you become retrievable? And how do you sell the products that you're providing? And how do those products need to evolve? So it's far more than AEO that we're trying to walk them through. It's, if you think about it as a step, it's first off, how do you get into the Google AI overview answers? And then how do you get into the ChatGPT answers? And then Claude and Perplexity. But then how do you start thinking about some of this agentic commerce? If I'm using Comet or Dia or the new AI in Chromecast, or Google Chrome. So what does that look like? But then also, what does these agentic always on future look like when I'm walking around with a pin, when I'm got some glasses on my head or some VR headset and it's all connected? So yeah, I think all of that's going to be interesting. I think the bit that I'm actually really excited about, and I talk quite a lot about, is actually truth. I think truth will be way more objective and way clearer. I think we're actually going to look back at this period of the last 10 years and say, wow, what a shit show. Like, how were we so deceived by fake images or fake profiles on X or misinformation that we didn't know what was what? I think, and a lot of this goes into blockchain, which is why it's very hard to really go into it. But I think basically everything will be hashed. Every news story, every image you create, and will be tied to an owner. And anything that's then changed will be a proof of record of that change. And I don't think we'll read it. I think it will be the same way that you don't read the code when you load a website. I think the agents will basically do that scan and say, hey, this was changed 4 times and it wasn't changed by anyone you know or trust. So I do think we're actually going to live in a quite truthful world where everyone's worried about AI slot, but I think it will be impossible to actually fool somebody into thinking an image or a video isn't real, because we'll know the exact proof of record of these things. So that is one area I'm actually quite optimistic about.
So there is hope. And I think for a lot of people who are kind of quite fearful that the future isn't bright, I think, your words there are that, yeah, with a little bit of careful thought, bit of strategy, and again, these partnerships and connections are going to be absolutely key, aren't they? So associating yourself with the right organizations, investing your time and energy into, maybe the truthful ones that emerge, because, there'll be winners and losers with all of these things, as there always is. So that's an amazing insight. Sal, this has been really, really good. How do people connect with you or follow your work kind of going forward?
So if you want to check out LangSync, you can get to langsync.ai. We do free consultations, if you ever want to take a look at AEO or just even want to have a chat about maybe what you should do at a high level, more than happy to chat with you. I clear up pretty much most of my time just to do those chats. So it was great to meet new people. And you can get me on LinkedIn. If you go to Sal Mohammed, feel free to connect. Always connect with people and discuss anything. So feel free to reach out.
Really appreciate your time. And so many interesting anecdotes. And you've really got me thinking, which I always think is great evidence of an amazing conversation. So Sal, thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you for your time too, Neil. Great chat.